Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'm going to discuss the channel. So a bit of an update for regular viewers and subscribers a month after the general election in terms of what I was saying I might be looking at doing differently and what I'm going to be adding in the short and maybe medium term. So first thing to say is things have not panned out quite as I expected. There are videos I had planned for the weeks after the election which either haven't been uploaded yet or in some cases just never will. One that will be coming, just not yet, is my video on the objective metrics on which I think it'll be fair to judge the success of the Labour government. But as those metrics won't begin to be available for like a year, because it's also because it's been really hot in the studio for recording extra videos, and because politics has now gotten, it's remained crazy in a way that no one's really going to watch that video right now anyway. So there's no great rush with it. It's all written, but it can wait. Might come out later this week. I suspect not. Much more likely next month. Doesn't matter. The content of the video can't be put into practice until next year anyway. But I use this as an example of how I expected things to calm a little. I knew they wouldn't just overnight normalise. I knew that the Tories would continue to provide the entertainment. After the results with Reform UK, they were going to be, the main line of attack, I suppose. There was also a chance that the scale of the defeat would humble the Tories a little bit. The government being made up of largely stable individuals was going to mean less drama of major banter interest, because most people are bothered about what the government does, not so much the party political shenanigans in general. And with summer coming up, no government scandals, I foresaw a quiet period where I'd have time for more reflective videos on the analysis of the election results, what that might mean for this parliament. After summer and after the drama of the Tory leadership contest, maybe things would settle down into a calmer political atmosphere. Maybe overall views would dip as a result and I'd be thinking about a few additions or changes of format, and that might still happen. It's just that it's not happening yet. I mean, don't get me wrong, like if I do a video on Labour's housing policy, which I did, or energy policy or tax policy, it doesn't get as many views as when I did the same topics with the Conservative government, because I'm largely saying the Labour versions are sensible. There's maybe the odd concern or caveat, whereas my view of the Conservative equivalents was much less complimentary. This is all bad videos do way better than, actually things are better now videos, by and large, nature of the beast. But in general terms, there's still a lot of crazy to talk about. So much so, there's one aspect of my approach to editorial decisions that has changed. Before the election, I'd have a long list of possible topics for discussion. And I'd generally pick the ones I thought would be the best for views. Every now and then there'd be one I would go, no, I really want to do that. It's really important. I can't think of a way of presenting it that's going to make it click attractive, but it's really important, so I'm going to do it anyway. I keep saying that the trick to social media is the vast majority of your content needs to be engaging as a top priority. And that has to acknowledge that as much as I dislike echo chambers, social media platforms are echo chambery, but it doesn't have to be absolutely all of it. You can put out the odd bit of content, which is what I call the message as opposed to the engagement, where that is the top priority. Just don't do too much of it if you want to grow. Whereas now there's no shortage of the crazy. But it's like a shorter list of potential topics, but you can say much more about them because the crazy is not from the government, or very little of it is. Which means that my previous pattern of choosing topics runs the risk of not actually doing videos on anything the government is up to for days or even weeks at a time, which is ridiculous for a channel that's built up like mine, which is mostly a Westminster-focused political commentary channel. So, I've been doing the odd video on government policies or other issues, even when I knew it wouldn't get as many views as something else. And even when, you could argue there wasn't a pressing case to do it. But the rules of social media remain the same. And I'm going to have to play by those rules if I want to sort of keep ahead. So it will still have to be about 90% crazy where the crazy is available. But I also have to say I am disappointed that it's turned out this way. And for a couple of reasons. The most important reason is the precise nature of the crazy that's been occupying my time is very damaging to the country and many people. I said of the Tory leadership contest, I didn't want Braverman to succeed. People go, we could get Suella Braverman, the Tories would be out for way longer. Look, she'd completely destroy the Tory party. And I would say, I don't care. She's too toxic. She would do too much damage to politics, even as leader of the opposition. The same is true of these far-right terrorist acts, because that's what they are. The use of violence in order to try and effect a change of government policy is one of the legal definitions of terrorism in this country. So that's what we've got here. And although it provides a lot of very interesting topics of discussion, and they are absolutely going to be my main topic of discussion because they are obviously the top political story right now, really wish it wasn't. And I'll be very pleased if they are shut down sooner rather than later. I could, and I'm not exaggerating, do 100% of my videos on this single topic right now. And they'd all be very different videos. They'd all get plenty of views because there's genuinely a lot to talk about and so many angles from which to talk about it and new stuff every single day. But it's of its time, and I'm very wary of leaving aside more core topics and trying to pick them back up later. So I will keep trying to make sure I avoid having too many days where this single topic is all of the content. So far, there hasn't been a day where it has. There's always been, of the two main videos, one on something else. That is by conscious design. I've made sure that's been the case. I do think there's going to be the odd day, probably tomorrow actually, it's going to be one of them, where that won't be the case. But I am going to be careful about that. Because unlike some who might focus on views for their channel at the exclusion of all else, and they'll just pick whatever they think is going to get the most views, and welcome the crazy, as long as it doesn't hurt them personally, I take the opposite view. If politics completely normalises in this country, which I don't think it will, but if it does, and let's say I can't adapt on YouTube, that's my failing. I'll be happy. I'll just go back to teaching. I don't want the world to burn just so I have a nice job moaning at a camera each day and get up when I like. But the second reason I'm disappointed, much less serious, but I still expect politics to calm down a bit. It has to. Labour understands that the collapse of trust in politics is a critical problem for them as well as the country. They genuinely want to restore trust. Now, whether their plans will do so is another matter. That is an issue of whether they've got the right plan to do it. But I believe that they are motivated to restore trust, in contrast to the way the Tories saw advantage in burning it. And I'd hoped we could enter this phase fairly quickly in order for me to adapt and see how things turn out. This process has now been delayed. One idea I talked about before was maybe adding in some extra live streams, maybe half-hour live streams late afternoon or on weekdays or something. Various ideas I've got for that, but that was an idea for calmer times, which aren't here yet. It's not something I just want to launch into because live streams have to be done at specific times. So then you're committing yourself to certain times when you can't do another thing. And I already have multiple specific time commitments throughout my week with my own live streams, then the same again on the Politics Social channel. So adding in a load more just makes me way less flexible when it comes to doing the other things I need to do. So it's not something I'm going to rush into until I think there's a net benefit to it. But an idea I didn't have the last time I talked about the channel was podcasts. This is Max's fault, really. A couple of weeks ago, he posted a top 12 political podcasts on YouTube, and he asked why he and I weren't on there. And I said, well, it's probably because we don't do podcasts, Max. But you look at the list, and like some of them, like the Rest in Politics is like the sort of the leader on it. I'm never going to get that many views. It doesn't matter how good a podcast I do. No question. But some on the list, this is like the top 12, and they're woeful. I thought if I did a podcast, it'd definitely do better than some of that stuff. Just showing the lack of breadth and depth of political podcasts on YouTube, I guess. So I thought I'd do one. But here's the thing, how to do it. There are 3 basic ways to arrange a podcast to my mind, and all of them have got their pros and cons. The first and I think best way to do a podcast is find someone who can be relied upon to give me a good argument on any given topic. So someone with a very different perspective on most things, ideally everything, but someone who's also honest. So they believe their own arguments, because there's no value in a debate unless it's honest. And I don't really need someone who will try to spread disinformation on my channel. However, the downsides are that 1, I don't think I could find such a person. My introversion means I'm neither skilled nor even interested in network building. So finding an honest person on the right wing who wants to do a podcast with me seems somewhat unlikely. Second, it would mean the podcast would have a particular appeal. So let's say it builds up and it gets an audience, and then suddenly the other person stopped doing it and I had to find a replacement. That changes because I've got to get a different person then. And also, if I try and get a similar sort of person, finding a needle in a haystack is bad enough, but maybe having to keep finding them, that is a tiresome prospect. So although I think that's the best format, I think it's out of reach. It's the hardest to achieve, certainly, and the riskiest, and I think it's out of reach. admittedly, it could still work with someone closer to me politically, but the point of having two people is having two perspectives. Works less well if there's more agreement than disagreement. Might still work, but it's not ideal. I mean, I might as well try arguing with myself, which I do sometimes do, but I'm not sure it's all that entertaining. The second option is doing what Max and Alex do on their Sunday Roast channel, get guest co-hosts each week. That still has the problem of my being bad at networking, but it at least means you don't need someone who's going to that you're hoping will commit to it for the long term. The third option is a solo one, which is by far and away the most comfortable for someone like me, but then you need to think much more carefully about the format, because the format's fairly straightforward with another person, not at all for a solo one. Do I just spend an hour discussing a topic at length without a script? That's possible, and I might indeed give that a try at some point. I know not all podcasts are an hour long. You know, some are just 15 minutes. I could, in theory, just do what I do with the videos, but just talk unscripted for 15 minutes on a particular topic. I could even do that every day and put that out. That's a possibility I could think about. But I also think for a podcast, really, they probably ought to be longer, half an hour to an hour. And I think if it's going to be one person, it should be better structured. You should think more about the structure. But that would mean more preparation and editing time, when it's not like I have a lot of extra time to do this. So I had a little idea just to get the ball rolling. This wouldn't be the long-term plan, but just to get it started. So way back when, I used to do a video each week for a short period, because it didn't really work, where I just answered a series of questions from the comments. Didn't do very well. So I dropped the idea, but it might work better for a podcast. And even if it doesn't, because it's a podcast, it'll be separate to my normal videos, so it won't poison the well of my normal content. It would also help structure it in a way that doesn't mean loads of prep and extra editing time. So we'll give that a go for a few weeks. I've put up a post in the community section of the channel page. To get to it, just click on the channel name underneath the video, a different bios, then click on the community tab. There'll be a call for questions. I'll pick out the ones that seem to get the most engagement. There'll be some editorial process, as long as they're appropriate to the channel content, the sort of stuff I would normally talk about, and something I think I've got something sensible to say. So that's going to be my little side project, just to get the ball rolling while I have a think about how I might be able to do podcasts better long term. I'm thinking it's a little bit like the shorts. I still don't have a strategy for the shorts. I just decided to go with it and work out a strategy later. It's nearly a year later and I'm still thinking about it. Yeah, the shorts I'm doing are getting about 1 million views a month. So worth doing, even though I still haven't worked out how to do them yet. Same could apply for the podcast. I don't think there's any harm in just going for it because it's separate to my long form, my normal content. It doesn't poison that if I make a mess of it. It doesn't have any, as long as I don't do anything stupid and get my channel blocked, it doesn't have any obvious drawbacks to give it a try. So that's what I'm going to do. In terms of the other things I've been thinking of, very much going to be reactive. So as I discussed before the election, I do think some things will change in ways in which I will need to adapt, but I won't be jumping the gun. It's a case of me thinking what might happen, what I might be able to do to change things so that I can have lots of time to think about it. There doesn't need to be a knee-jerk reaction and any sort of panic. I can just go, oh, this thing I foresaw is happening now. I will now do this thing. But there we are. Hopefully that brings up to speed with where things are going at the moment. I think there will probably be a few more of these subscriber type updates before the end of this year, because I do think some things will change. But thanks for listening. And until next time, I'll see you later.